Hey, I'm Kaylee, and today I'm going to be talking about sad beige moms. Forgive my voice, I'm recovering from a little bit of a cold, so I'm still kind of congested. And I'm trying out this little microphone situation because I literally cannot force myself to talk any louder because I'm too embarrassed. Anyways, if you don't know what a sad beige mom is, I would probably define it as almost exclusively mom who is following the sort of monochromatic beige, white, light colored trend of baby gear, baby clothes, adult clothes, nurseries, that sort of thing. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that, just to clarify, but there is an interesting aspect to it that I have been thinking about lately. So, the original people who inspired me to make this video and to kind of think more on this topic are Tiffany Ferg and Robert Tolpe, so I'm going to link their videos below. Tiffany's video is actually on Water Talk, but the topic kind of trickles into the sad beige mom trend and talking about consumerism and kind of following trends to your own detriment, I guess. And then Robert Tolpe's video is specifically on sad beige moms. He mentions specifically things in terms of class and income level. One of the points that he made was sort of like this historical overview of the use of color by wealthy people within their homes and their clothing, and how that trend kind of reversed because of taxes imposed on those people. So that's kind of an interesting way to look at it. And so this beige trend kind of became like a camouflage, according to him. First, I'm going to start out with some facts that we know about color and its role within early childhood development specifically. The use of color, especially contrasting color, like within the newborn stage, is super crucial for visual and cognitive development in the newborns. When you are first born, you cannot see the full range of color. Obviously, this is an entirely new world for newborns, so it would probably be really overstimulating if they could see all of the color. But that is why you're going to see highly contrasting patterns on newborn toys, like those little crinkly fabric books with like a black and white checker or stripes or whatever it is. That's really important for newborns in terms of visual and cognitive development. I think the issue comes when everything is so colorful. So there were some theories that too much color is going to be distracting and overstimulating, especially for a young baby, and too little color is understimulating, and there's nothing really to focus on because it's just like this expansive nothingness. We know, even as adults, that certain colors indicate certain emotions or actions. Like, we literally use stoplights, and certain colors like blue or pink might be more calming for a child or a baby. You know, since babies cannot verbally communicate, visual communication is very important in the early days. And when you're depriving children and babies of any sort of contrast or color, that's going to negatively impact their visual and cognitive development. Now, generally, I don't see any problem with parents, especially of young babies, before their children have sort of developed like their own personality and likes and dislikes and preferences. I don't see any issue with dressing them the way that you want to dress them. It's like they're not going to pick out their clothes at that age, whatever. I think the issue comes when this is sort of forced upon children who are clearly able to communicate their preferences, either for a color or a pattern or a character, whatever it is. I think when it's pushed beyond that age, it's problematic because it's very, in my opinion, overly controlling, because children are innocently experimenting, and I don't think it's fair for us to impose our own aesthetic tastes on them. I can see my mindset changing because I am all for the sort of monochromatic muted colors and like an all matching wardrobe. I get that. It's practical, it's easy to clean, it's nice to look at. But I'm seeing my mindset shift towards, if she likes it, she can have it, because she's a baby and she just needs to learn what she likes as a person. So colors are necessary for development in children, and contrasting colors for newborns. They're an important part of communication before verbal communication is developed. And even now, as adults, color indicates, importance or relaxation or focus or sleep, whatever it is. Next, I'm going to kind of go into some theories. These aren't necessarily facts that have been proven, but they're important to consider. And a couple of these, like dappled in, I learned from Robert Tolpe's video, and also just from Googling. Any Google search will tell you color is important. Anyways, one of the things that Robert mentioned in his video was that these plastic toys that are really colorful and widely available and cheap are, I guess, demonized in these communities where this beige, white aesthetic is used and followed, because they would have certain chemicals in them. And that's totally understandable, and he does mention the same thing in terms of the monochromatic wooden toys that you usually see being used by the sad beige moms. As you can see right here, I've got a wooden book stand or whatever, and I think it goes both ways. I would find it hard to believe that the plastic toys that are widely available and cheap are not somehow toxic, but you're gonna come across that with anything, I think. And also, these blanched wooden toys have been in chemical baths and stripped of all remnants of color, according to Robert. But I will say that the original ideals of Montessori approach, I wouldn't say that that actually aligns with the sad beige mom aesthetic. Most Montessori toys that I've seen, at least, that are actually Montessori toys are pretty colorful. Don't have anything to say about any sort of chemical dyes or paints or whatever. I don't know anything about that. And another scientific theory that I saw when I was looking this up, according to some experiments, children were more independent and imaginative in a sort of less busy, muted, clean play space or workspace, as opposed to one that was full of color and pattern and contrast. There was less sensory overload, and it was more productive, you could say. That, I think, makes sense even for adults. And that's what I was mentioning earlier. I think the overuse of color and contrast, where it's everywhere you look and it's very overstimulating, would obviously lead to distraction. So, that's something to take into consideration too, which I think is what some of these sad beige moms are kind of going for, is less distraction. Next sort of section of this video, I'm going to talk about my personal experience. When I was newly pregnant, I was still on Instagram, and once Instagram figures out what you're looking at and what you like, it's all about that for you. So I was very influenced by this aesthetic, the sad beige mom aesthetic. Everything was really clean and modern, but still kind of boho, and I liked the wooden toys. This non-toxic, crunchy approach, because obviously I specifically told people who were buying me things that cared to buy me what I liked. I prefer muted colors, I prefer no characters, and I still stand by that mostly. I wanted like no glitter and crazy unicorn stuff. I still, when I was gifted things that were outside of that, I still used them and I still liked them. So I didn't take it as far as like, I've seen some people who will show things that they received as gifts and talk about how they're never going to use them and they're going to sell them or they're going to give them away. I think that's a bit too far. Your kid's going to grow out of these clothes really quickly and they're going to spit up on them, they're going to get food on them, they're going to use the bathroom in them, whatever. So I never took it that far. But I really liked the general aesthetic of this like all white, all beige, brown, prairie, crunchy, organic look. I liked it. I cannot remember when I started thinking about this in terms of like, why am I doing this? I've never like limited any color in her toys or anything like that. I do try to sort of follow a Montessori approach in terms of toys, but I mean, we've got all kinds of plastic toys. We don't have that many battery toys though, so I feel good about that. But I was just really influenced by Instagram at that time, and I think being newly pregnant and my identity shifting sort of left me vulnerable to these trends that somehow seemed like your whole life could be put together, you could look nice, people would respect you, people would think that you're wealthy. That was appealing. Now, she's getting older, I don't know, maybe 2-ish years off of Instagram, and I'm seeing how following these trends can be so detrimental when they trickle into depriving yourself or your children of natural things like color. That's just my personal experience, and I have some personal theories about why sad beige moms exist and why they might be so defensive sometimes. And like I said before, I don't have a problem with this trend as a trend, like for your clothes, for your home, for your kids' clothes, whatever. I think it's a problem when it becomes controlling to the point of no color exposure whatsoever in toys or clothes, or once your kids get older and have their own preferences. My theories. Like I kind of mentioned, I think it's a sense of control. In my experience, becoming a mom was the most out of control feeling that I've ever experienced. It's, for me, anxiety inducing, it's messy, it's confusing, everything is new for the first time, forever now. So I think this approach and this aesthetic is giving moms a sense of control. And I don't think that's like a bad thing in general, because it does make you feel better to make things practical or make things nice to look at, because there is so little sometimes that you get for just yourself as a mom. Sometimes it goes too far. Trying to control other people's perception of you. I cannot remember, it might have been a different video that I saw. A woman was defending her aesthetic. It turned right into classism because it is followed by, really famous people. Like, the only one I can think of is Kim Kardashian, because I've seen that, like, expensive empty house that she has that's all beige or white or whatever. It might make these moms who are in vulnerable positions, and I'm included, feel like other people will respect them more or think highly of them in terms of their trendiness or their wealth or their education or whatever it may be, because they present their outer persona as this aesthetic, which ultimately these things would lead people to think that they will be happy in the end, but I don't think that's true. This is kind of on the other end of the spectrum. I've seen some of these sad beige moms, they're defending themselves, right? And they don't want to put their kids in these cheap or colorful or character-filled clothes or have any ugly toys or whatever it may be. The people on the other end of that spectrum who either don't care, don't have the time, or want their kids to have that experience of an explosion of color and glitter and toys and whatnot. It's sort of arrogant to assume that the people who are just putting their kids in what's available, what's given to them, are less than or not thoughtful enough about what they're putting their kids in or allowing them to play with or look at. Most people probably are just sailing through day to day, doing their thing, not really thinking too much about this, set of clothes that their child is going to wear for the next couple months. It's a very privileged place to be in, to be choosy about what colors you put your kid in or where you shop. And sometimes it's really just not an option. They're either going to the closest supermarket or thrift store or whatever, and they're just picking out what they like or what their kids like. The sad beige mom thing, on the extreme end of it, just becomes very judgmental. And I'll be the first to admit that I felt that way. Like, I didn't understand how people could put their little babies into these very intense pieces of clothing that say, like, heartbreaker or, I don't know. Sometimes no one cares. If you care, that's great. But sometimes people just don't care. This trend, I mean, I've hardly seen it in real life. Hardly. Except for in very specific groups of people. I think it's sort of targeting lonely young moms and impressionable moms who are just desperate to fit in or find some sort of community, and I think that really points to the lack of in-person community and support from family and friends. Just generally, sometimes it's frowned upon to stay home with your kids. Unless you're gonna go to a church group, there's really not that much. So I think when you can have some sort of connection to this online world, this trend, it just makes you feel better, and I get that. That's the last of my theories. I'm going to conclude with some thoughts. Overall, in life, balance, that's a good thing. I think color in the right places and the right amount, that's great. I think once your kid develops more of a personality and preferences, you should kind of let them go with it. There are certain points where it might get extreme, I guess, but that depends on the person. And generally, if we're just talking about colors or glitter or unicorns or trucks or dinosaurs, anything, if your kid likes it, go with it. That's my opinion. You gotta have balance. If you like your beige clothes and you like your beige home, great. Your kid is not you. They're not an accessory. Just please allow them to experiment and learn what they like and who they are. And I have a prediction. Recently, probably within the last 6 months or so, stores like Walmart, Kroger, more common stores are carrying these sad beige aesthetic clothes. I predict that the trend is going to flip and it's going to overcorrect. I have a feeling once these clothes are becoming widely available in stores that are cheap and not on trend, I think that there's going to be an overcorrection and people are going to really lean into the colors and the patterns and the real childlikeness of babies and children. What Robert mentioned in his video, these poverty and wealth signifiers, like how you dress, how your home looks, I think it's taking a turn. I think we're moving past the minimalist, all white, beige, monochrome, bare look. I think we're gonna overcorrect towards maximalism in the home and in clothing. That is my video on sad beige moms. It's kind of chatty. I think it's an interesting topic, so if you have any thoughts, just leave them in the comments, and thanks for watching.